is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Mayoral Debate with Tom Swarbrick.
Very good afternoon to you. 2 minutes past 5 is the time. Tom Swarbrick here on LBC. In just 8 days, voters across the country will turn out for the biggest festival of democracy ahead of the big one later this year. And in London, voters are turning out to decide, amongst other things, who will be their next mayor. The latest YouGov poll currently has the incumbent, Labour's Sadiq Khan, seeking an historic third term, 19 points ahead of his nearest rival, the Conservative candidate Susan Hall. Behind her is the Green candidate Zoe Garbett and the Lib Dem candidate Rob Blackie. You've heard from the Reform UK candidate and an independent candidate on LBC already. This hour, then, is the chance for the current frontrunners to go head-to-head in what is perhaps the final major opportunity for those candidates to make their case to you. This hour, Labour's Sadiq Khan, the Conservatives' Susan Hall, the Green Party's Zoe Garbett and the Lib Dem candidate Rob Blackie are live for an hour to take your questions. Folks, welcome all of you to LBC. It's lovely to have you in the studio. Thank you for committing to this. We're going to hear our first caller in just a second. Before we do, let me say that you are free to pick up on any comments you hear from other candidates and say your piece. Don't be shy about getting stuck in.
We're not shy.
Play the ball, not the man. So I'll do my level best to make sure everyone gets a fair crack of the whip as we go. Let's come to our first caller. Matt is in Leighton. Matt, your question to the candidates.
Hi. Obviously, we need more houses in London, but these take time to build. What will you do to help London's renters now?
Housing, clearly a massive issue for people right across the country, not just in London, but in London specifically. Let's start with you, Sadiq Khan. You won the last one, so in golfing terms, it's your honour. What are you going to do to ease housing pressure on people?
Well, Matt, I'm somebody who was raised on a council estate. I know the difference it made to my dad, who's a bus driver, my mum, who is a seamstress. Having a property where the rents were affordable, a landlord wouldn't come and hike the rents every 6 months, but also my dad and mum could put money aside to save for a deposit to buy their own home and to fulfill their aspiration of being a homeowner. So I know what we need are council homes, genuinely affordable homes, rather than the luxury penthouse flats that were being built before I became mayor. So Matt, let me see what I've been doing. I've ditched the dodgy definition that Johnson had for an affordable home. That was one cost £500,000 to buy, or 80% of market value to rent. And we're building record numbers of council homes, more than any time since the 1970s. We're completing more homes any time since the 1930s. And if I'm re-elected, we're going to build 40,000 more council homes, 6,000 more rent control homes, but also we're going to support renters, Matt, which is the big issue you're raising, because the supply of housing won't meet demand for some time. We've already got a rogue landlords register. We've already been supporting councils become a licensing scheme. If I'm re-elected, I'm going to pay for tenants to have free legal advice to take on landlords. And the real prize is this, Matt. We've got the chance this year of a Labour government working with a Labour mayor. And the Labour government's promised 1.5 million new homes in the first term. That's the difference Labour winning makes.
You promised bold, radical change 8 years ago. In the London plan, you pledged to build 52,000 homes a year, half of them affordable. In 8 years, you've managed 37,000 homes a year. You take responsibility for that shortfall.
I'm really proud that we're completing more homes than any time since the 1930s. To give you an idea of the scale of that, we've met the government's target. We've smashed it.
37,000 homes a year in 8 years compared to 52,000 homes a year.
But it's really important. So the needs of our city are around 56,000. I accept the needs of our city. It's never been met since the 1930s. What we've done, though, is more completions, 11,000 more than Johnson, more council homes anytime more than the 1970s. What we need, though, is 6 times the investment from central government. And with a Labour government and a Labour mayor, we can do that.
Let me bring in Susan Hall.
Well, all we hear from Sadiq Khan is thousands are promised and they're not delivered. We do need more properties. We all know that. We all know we need more homes. Sadiq Khan often talks about the starts. I've started this, I've started that. You can't live in a start. A start is a hole in the ground, hasn't got a front door, a roof, it hasn't got windows. You can't live in a start. The government have given him billions of pounds to build, and he hasn't built. He's had 8 years, and he has really failed on housing. And of course, rents will come down when there's more properties being built. But Sadiq Khan has failed on this. We need to open up the London plan, which I will do, make it much, much easier for developers, planners to build more. That's what needs to be done.
I'll come to that in just a moment, Susan Hall. Rob Blackie.
Sadiq has missed his housing target almost every year since he became mayor, and that is why rents have gone through the roof. Now, to the caller's question, what can you do for renters today? I've proposed we provide legal support to renters against bad landlords, but we also have to get more housing done. Landlords can act badly now because there's a shortage of housing. Our population's increased by 1 million in the last 15 years or so. We haven't built houses to keep up with that. We've got to make it easier to build houses. It can't just be social housing, though. It has to be private housing too.
I think, thank you. I think it's, we are absolutely beyond a housing crisis. This is what I hear every day as a councillor, and I experience as a private renter myself. And what we are hearing, and what the question was asking, is how can we solve this more quickly? And one of the things that Greens in City Hall have done is make sure that councils can acquire homes that already exist on the market so that you can get the homes we need much quicker. They're often much bigger. And we think this is also good for the climate emergency because you're not having to build more homes either. And what I'm really pushing for as well, are rent controls within the private rented sector. That is, just absolutely needed for private renters.
And you, Sadiq Khan, agree with rent controls? You want rent controls in?
Because Greens pushed you to agree.
Listen, I work really closely with the Greens. I want to commend not just Zoe, but the team in City Hall, the Greens, who've been raising this issue for some time now. Here's the really good news. So not only have we built 3 times more affordable homes than Boris Johnson, not only have we built 10 times more council homes than Boris Johnson, look at the rest of England. We are building twice as many council homes as the rest of England put together.
Since 2016, 65,000 affordable homes have been completed. Under your predecessor, it was 90,000.
Well, no, that's not right, because what's happened is this. Since 2016, more council homes, more generally affordable homes, more completions, more than twice the rest of the country put together. And what Keir Starmer came to my launch has announced is a real injection of money for genuinely affordable homes, and I can promise a big chunk of those are going to come to London.
Sorry, you go ahead.
I was just going to say we need to make sure that genuinely affordable is genuinely affordable.
Spot on.
Because a lot of the time that includes shared ownership, which we know from a lot of Londoners that isn't affordable. So we really need to look at what that definition of affordable means in the London plan.
Susan Hall, why won't you pledge rent control, given that the average rent in London in March was £2,600 a month?
Because it doesn't work. And the rents are far too high. I agree with that. We need more homes built.
It does work. It can work in London. If we had a rent commission full of renters that could keep an eye on the market and making sure it doesn't collapse, it could absolutely work in London. So
this is something we disagree on. There aren't enough properties out there to rent, and that is the issue. And that is the issue.
The reason why the Tories oppose rent controls and rent freezes is because they're in the pocket of landlords.
Well, so does your party, though. Your National Party opposes it too.
The number of Tory MPs who are landlords is staggering. My manifesto is quite clear. If I'm re-elected, 6,000 rent control homes, 40,000 council
We've got millions of people in London. That's going to make no difference whatsoever.
You don't have the power to bring this in.
I do have the power to bring in rent control homes. I've got the funding in relation to the 6,000 rent control homes.
That's got nothing to do with rent controls.
I've got 40,000 council homes, legal advice for free for those tenants who've got dodgy landlords, but also, importantly, all of them being a licensing scheme, really important for the quality of accommodation.
Tom,
Susan?
it's promise after promise after promise. After 8 years, look at the situation we're in now. All you ever do, Sadiq, is throw numbers out there that when people try and analyse them and look into them, you then throw another load of numbers out there. Nobody believes you anymore
Well, at
because
least
you
he's
don't
got
deliver.
numbers, Susan Hall, because I've looked at your manifesto on
and
house
they won't
building.
There
are 6 paragraphs on it.
Yeah,
you want to get pension funds to build more build-to-rent properties.
Yeah.
So how many does London have, and how many more do you want?
That I've said all along, I won't give numbers. My manifesto, everything in there is deliverable. Everything in there is costed up and is deliverable.
No number of homes?
Well, because I have sat by and listened to Sadiq Khan promising the earth for the last 7 years I've been on the Assembly. So I promised to do this, and we've started that. I go back. You can't live in a start. It's all he ever does. He's had billions of pounds, billions from the government,
as
and
Mayor
he
of
does
London,
not deliver.
Will get pension funds to build an as yet unconfirmed number of build-to-rent properties.
Yes, because I'm not going to give you a number and not keep to it.
What's that good for Matt? How good is that for Matt and other renters?
In all honesty, what good is it when you just hear numbers thrown at you? You can't believe it, because we've had so many numbers thrown at us from Sadiq Khan, and he hasn't delivered.
Rob Blackie.
I think the two things the Mayor can do to speed up housing very quickly, one of which is set up a citywide development company, something the Mayor promised to do but didn't do, something the Lib Dems have done in Sutton and has been very successful, but also make it easier to build housing. Right now, the Mayor adds 70 requirements onto every house, on top of national and local plans, which makes it very, very difficult to work out whether or not you can build.
I think
it slows it down.
I think we need to make sure that we're holding developers to account, and that's what those rules and regulations are about. You can see how
if you put weights on somebody's feet, they're going to run a marathon slower.
You can see how where developers haven't been held to account, we haven't had the properties we need in areas. It's changed them hugely. They've been gentrified and people have been priced out.
Sadiq?
I know, because I've seen them there. The Greens and me and Labour have been around North Kensington speaking to the victims of Grenfell Tower. Rob, those regulations and standards...
Well, those weren't London regulations, those were national regulations, not your regulations.
Which is why we've improved regulations, because we've learned the lessons from Grenfell. I wish the Tories knew it as well, mate.
6,000 homes that would be available to public sector workers under this under the scheme that would prevent the rents going up by a particular percentage, or a hard fixed number on the rent that people would pay. Which would it be?
In relation to the rent control homes. Yeah. So it's linked to key workers' salary. And so anybody in a middle income or a key worker would be eligible for the rent control homes separately. In the affordable homes we're building, the London Living Rent, there's some set aside that are intermediate renting for key workers as well. And on top of that, other 40,000 council homes as well.
So the rent controls that the Green Party talks about are rent controls across the whole private rented sector. And we support this as a national level. You've got Caroline Lucas in Parliament pushing for rent controls. You've got Greens in City Hall, me saying that we need rent controls, and that would be for the whole of the private rented sector, bringing in a freeze and then bringing them down, making sure we're keeping an eye on the market so it doesn't collapse, but making sure that we're getting that. And that's why I think we need a strong Green independent mayor voice to government to put forward that case.
Keir Starmer disagrees with you on this, doesn't he?
Look, unlike the Tory candidate, I will stand up to a Labour leader and a Conservative leader. There are things that Keir and I disagree on, of course there are. What I've done in my manifesto is set out how we're going to pay for 6,000 rent control homes, but also support those tenants who have been let down by dodgy landlords. And it's really important. You've got a Mayor of London that is a champion and advocate for this city, not in the pocket of the leader of their party, whether it's Sunak, Truss, May,
Susan
Johnson or Cameron.
Oh, what nonsense. He'll always come up with personal attacks. The reason Keir Starmer doesn't agree with rent control is because he knows it doesn't work.
When Sadiq Khan says you're in Rishi Sunak's pocket, when was the last time you spoke to Rishi Sunak?
When we went campaigning about a month ago.
You were out, where was that?
In Kensington.
You were out with Rishi Sunak campaigning in Kensington. Yeah. So it's been more recently than the by-election win in Uxbridge.
Yes, we've been out campaigning.
And he fully backs your campaign?
Yes.
0345 6060 973 is the number. Let's get to more questions. Holly's in Leytonstone. Holly, your question to the candidates.
Hi, thanks. I want to know what you'll do to help families who are really struggling to afford the basics in London today. I know so many people in my local community and families in my daughter's school who are honestly really having a really tough time. And in particular, will the candidates commit to keeping free school meals for children in London? Thanks.
Holly, thank you very much indeed for the question. Let's go on that free school meals point first. Susan Hall, will you commit to
Yes, I did, and I actually committed to it before Sadiq Khan did. So there's no... I did, and that can be documented. That has been documented. I've agreed, yes, and it's going ahead for another year.
You're going to keep universal free school meals?
Yes, and when we look at the cost of living, perhaps we should remember that Sadiq Khan has put up council tax by 70% since he's been in.
I'll come to that in just a moment. You said relatively recently, though, didn't you, that you thought the idea of universal free school meals was wrong, that it would allow for the children of millionaires to receive a free school meal at the expense, perhaps, of children who would need it.
But nevertheless, I said I'll continue it.
So you've had to change your mind on this?
No, I said I'd go ahead with it. It's documented out there, the late last year, before Sadiq Khan said he would do it.
So you're not opposed to the principle of taxes paying for free school meals for already wealthy Londoners?
For children that need feeding, I would think that they should have a nutritional, high-quality meal. And that's what we've agreed to continue for another year.
How much does that cost?
140 million.
Sadiq Khan, you would continue this on for children in secondary school?
Well, congratulations, you've got the Tory candidate performing a U-turn live on air.
No.
Let's be quite clear, because Zoe was there, as indeed was Rob last week, where I promised to extend free school meals permanently in primary schools if I'm elected, universal free school meals. And the Tory candidate said the phrase, there is no such thing as a free lunch. My promise, if I'm re-elected, is to ensure, as long as I'm mayor, every child that goes to a state primary school receives a nutritious free meal. And let me tell you the great news. I've been speaking to parents, teachers, experts over the last 7 months. Better attendance, better attentiveness, better productivity. Parents are less stressed, like Holly, because they know their child is eating a decent meal.
So what was it about what Sadiq Khan said last week that you now agree with, Susan Hall, on this question of free school meals?
I've said all along I would continue the policy. I've said that all along.
Last week you were telling, I think, another broadcaster that you disagreed with the principle behind it.
I think the term free, I actually said there's no such thing as a free meal, and that's accurate. But I've said all along I would continue the policy. I agreed to it before Sadiq Khan did. Sadiq Khan was trying to get the government to pay for it. Before then, I had said, and it's documented, I'll get my team to find it for you. It was documented. I said I would continue it this year.
Rob Blackie.
Well, Liberal Democrats brought in free school meals for primary school children, so we're very pleased that the Mayor has decided to extend it. And of course, we support it because it's very important that kids get that proper meal and that people who are just above the free school meal line get more food. But to Caller's question, housing is a critical thing we've got to fix in London. Right now, the lack of house building is what's driving up rents and driving up mortgages for people, not helped by the Conservative Party mess of the economy. But in London, we've got to take control of our own destiny and build more.
Just so we complete the circle, do you want to take credit for the free school meals idea as well? I mean, everyone else has. We might as well.
We actually did it.
I want to speak to Holly's question about the fact that families are being priced out of our city. I've had a primary school close in my ward, and it was heartbreaking for the families to see hundreds of families leaving the city because they can't afford it. And I think this question really speaks to the heart of the city we want to live in. I really support universal free school meals for primary school children, and I would extend that to secondary school children. And my manifesto is full of ideas for how we make this city more affordable, because that's the people's side I'm on.
And can we also go back, the lady that just has called in was talking about basically the cost of living. Mm-hmm. So many families have been affected so badly by the ULEZ expansion that this man has put in. £12.50 a day to the poorest of Londoners who simply cannot afford to replace their vehicles.
I promise you we will come to ULEZ in just a moment.
Okay.
You made the point about tax. Londoners have had the biggest council tax increase to date. The Mayor's precept increasing by just under 10% this year. Why have you done that at a difficult time for people?
Because the government's requiring both councils and mayors to increase to the precept for police, for non-police and precept to pay for police service in London. We've doubled the funding at a time the government's cut a third. The fire service, really important in light of Grenfell, but also the government was requiring me during the pandemic to remove free travel for those below 18, remove travel for those above the age of 60, and also widen the congestion charge so it covers up to the North Circular and South Circular.
That's hurting people,
I said no. And what I've done instead is universal free school meals for primary schools. 5 out of the last 8 years, fares have been frozen on TfL. Really important for those people.
That's not quite right.
But
No,
free travel for those below the age of 18 and below the age of 60 as well. And the choice is this. Fares going up by 42%, like they did under the previous mayor, or frozen under me. Ending free school meals, cancelling council homes, closing down youth clubs, fewer police officers, or doing the things I've done to help Londoners, like Holly, deal with the government's cost of living crisis.
Or potentially the introduction or potentially the introduction of a toll on the Blackwall Tunnel. Are you going to go with that? £10.50 return trip?
Well, no, what I've done in relation to ULEZ...
Was that a no on the Blackwall Tunnel?
On the Blackwall Tunnel, what we've done is we've carried on with Boris Johnson's plan, but made it better. So we've got 2 lanes now reserved for double-decker buses, zero-emission buses. We've not agreed with the DFT what the toll's going to be.
It's £2 billion on a motorway. No wonder you have to raise taxes.
Well, it's not paid for by taxes with respect to
anybody going underneath the river.
Anybody running to be mayor, I'd hope would do better research. So the Blackwall Tunnel is to address the issue of congestion, poor quality air, but the impact on productivity in that part of London. If you stand on Tower Bridge...
Was building a road next
If you stand on Tower Bridge and look west, there are 18 crossings. You look east, there's only one. We've got to address the issue of air quality, congestion and productivity, and the Blackwall Tunnel, with 2 reserved lanes for double-decker buses, will do that.
But then you're building the Silvertown Tunnel right next door, which is going to bring so much pollution to areas that are already over-polluted and deprived. And we know that then using a toll to stop people going through those areas, it just shouldn't have been built in the first place.
Well, listen, I think the Silvertown Tunnel combined with the Blackwall Tunnel will help that part of London deal with the issue of congestion and poor quality air. It's one of the few areas where I agree with Boris Johnson.
It's going to bring HGVs through an area that's already really congested.
Susan Hall, do you agree with Boris Johnson's 2012 plan about putting a toll on the Blackwall Tunnel?
Well, I believe that was the way to pay for the Silvertown Tunnel. The amount of money that is being branded around is terrifying to traders in particular who go in and out of the tunnel.
Can I just ask, clearly a cost of living issue is seen most obviously in rough sleeping, on which we have seen a 71% increase since 2016. How's that happened under your watch?
So rough sleeping across the country has more than doubled since 2010.
And you're responsible for London?
Yeah, and in London, it breaks my heart what we've seen in London. We've managed to take 16,000 rough sleepers off the streets in London, a record amount. 75% have stayed up. There's a conveyor belt of new people coming on our streets, which is why...
call them a conveyor belt.
Which is, well, I'm really sorry.
People that are experiencing extreme hardship.
As a consequence of being made homeless, as a consequence of welfare benefit changes, as well for...
You see it as a conveyor belt?
The number of people coming to our streets is in record numbers. We've got to get them off our streets, which is why I've promised to work with councils, charities and communities.
That's what you said in your last manifesto. You promised to abolish homelessness.
We've taken 75% of rough sleepers off the street permanently. Across the country, you've seen a big increase. And that's why I was really pleased with those from the Shadow Cabinet to announce a policy to end rough sleeping by the end of this decade by dealing with the causes as well as the consequences.
You're shaking your head, Susan Hall.
A conveyor belt of people. These are the most vulnerable people in our city. The reasons they're on the street are so different. We've got people with mental health problems. We've got people that have fallen out with their families. We've got veterans. There are so many different causes for people being on the streets. And you would
commit to taking people off the streets, ending homelessness by 2030?
Of course. And the thing is...
Where in your manifesto do you deal with this, Susan?
Can you I let you speak. Just have the courtesy to listen to me. The thing with people that are rough sleeping, the very best people... because I've spoken to them, are the charities like Street Angels, because the people that are homeless very often trust those people as opposed to...
It's not working.
By the way,
no, it isn't. And all he keeps doing is throwing money at it, because Sadiq thinks if you throw money at something, it will fix it, and it won't fix it.
I mean, if they had a universal basic income and had...
Oh, well, that doesn't work.
That really does work, but that's why we have fiscal policies that keep people in poverty.
And Labour, so we care about homelessness. They're not turning up to homelessness hustings tonight. They've been invited. They've decided to send along deputies.
True.
We've taken 16,000 rough sleepers off the streets of London. I'm incredibly proud to have done that. 3/4 have stayed off by our In for Good policies. You do a graph in relation to these people who are...
There's a conveyor belt of people, and you're not going to the hustings.
Rob and I are going, I think, just for the record.
Thank you.
Well, there are lots of hustings.
Is this a real serious issue? Is this a serious issue?
Absolutely.
Still time for you to change your mind.
Which is evidenced by the results over the last 8 years. The real prize is, look at what happened in the noughties, where a Labour government working with a Labour mayor ended Cardboard City in Waterloo by taking rough sleepers off the streets, making sure they stayed off. We've already built 1,500 permanent homes for those rough sleepers. 3/4 are off for good. We're going to carry on making progress. And the prize this year, I call it a moment of maximum opportunity, a Labour mayor working with a Labour government finally ending rough sleeping. It's a scandal.
The Labour government is sticking to the same conservative fiscal rules that are going to keep people in poverty and widen inequality.
We'll come to it. Alison's in Lambeth. Alison, your question to the candidates.
Hi. What are your plans to make sure that public transport is affordable?
Straight, quick, to the point. Zoe.
Great question. Our transport system is brilliant, but it is really unaffordable for lots of people, and I hear that some people are choosing to walk to work instead of afford a bus fare or get around on the train. I want to make London one flat fare, so a single fare across the whole system like we have on the bus. That's our ambition, so that would bring down fares in outer London. I'm also committing to reinstating the pre-9 a.m. travel for older people so they can get out and about, because we know that they need that for health appointments as well as their caring duties. And also I want to extend the free bus travel from 18-year-olds up to under 22s.
It's a lot of money, a single fare across all of London. How much does that cost?
So it is a lot of money, and it's something that I'd have to really push the government to give us the funding on. It'd be about, at the last estimate, about 500,000 for that policy. We would start by introducing it on the DLR as the first approach.
You'd also provide, I see, asylum seekers with free bus passes.
Yes.
Why is that a good idea?
Because they don't get enough support in this country, and they need to be able to get around. So this is offering, as part of us being a welcoming city, and now allowing asylum seekers to get around, I think is a really human thing to offer.
Is that something you'd offer, Sadiq Khan?
No, I'm not making promises I can't cost. I'm going to be frank with Londoners. I'm really proud. For the first time in the history of our great city, 5 of the 8 years where I've been mayor, we've frozen fares. The only 3 years we didn't freeze fares.
By the way, you haven't frozen fares. Not if you have a travel card, not if you use a daily or weekly cab. And that says TfL on my bank statement. It's not like it's a sort of some other organisation the money's going to.
So for the first time in the history of the mayoralty, we've frozen fares in 5 of the last 8 years.
Just answer that point, that's true, isn't it?
So TfL fares have been frozen. The fares that are the privatised train companies that the government's responsible for haven't.
So it says TfL on my bank statement. It's not actually a TfL fare.
We've introduced Hopper bus fare. First time in the history of our great city, £1.75, the cheapest fares in the country. Despite the government trying to make me get rid of free travel for under 18, it's still there. Despite the government trying to get rid of free travel for above the age of 60, it is still there. We didn't allow the government to extend the congestion charge to cover North Circular and South Circular. We've also, at the same time, though, invested in the Elizabeth Line, the Night Tube, the Night Overground, the Superloop, but also, really importantly, we've increased cycling 6-fold in London. So people like Natalie, who want to go around the city, can walk, cycle, use public transport. We're investing in new trains on the Piccadilly line, new trains on the DLR, and the first time in the history of TfL, in 24 years, we operate in a surplus in our revenue without a penny of support from the government.
I want to come to the money that's in TfL in just a moment. Susan Hall, you have said that you would scrap ULEZ. You think it's an unfair charge on people. What is it you don't like about clean air?
Well, I like everything about clean air, but the ULEZ expansion was put in under the pretext of giving us clean air. Sadiq Khan's own impact assessment showed him it would make virtually no difference at all. But the difference it does make is to families that simply cannot afford to replace their cars. They're being charged £12.50, and some of them have got to use their cars, especially people that live in outer London. We do not have the transport links that you have in inner London.
You don't think this makes a difference at all to the climate in London, the air quality that people breathe?
His own impact assessment showed that it wouldn't. And what I would do is put in a £50 million fund that we could look at, specifically looking at areas where there is poor air quality. We could be laser focused on that specific area.
Where are you going to find the 200 million quid that has been budgeted coming from ULEZ? Where are you going to find that if you scrap it?
Okay, it's all written down, which you could look in. But let me tell you this, Sadiq
What could you tell us now?
No, it's a long, complicated mix of where the money's coming from. But I will say this to you, is a 20...
You know where it's coming from?
Yeah, it's a 20...
Where?
It's all written down. It's a £21 billion budget he's got. Most people don't realise it's £21 billion. He manages to find £600 million in the last few months to throw sweeteners to the electorate to see if he can get elected again. So there is flex in the budget, there's no doubt. And if you're talking about travel, I tell you the one thing, I wouldn't have wasted £6.3 million renaming overground stations. He wastes money, your money, my money, like there's no tomorrow.
You don't believe in net zero by 2050, though, do you? You don't think it's a good idea?
Of course it's a good idea, but we cannot make sure that the people that pay for this are the ones that can afford it.
2050 is way too late. It needs to be 2030.
We need to bring it as soon as we can, but we cannot do it on the back of those that simply cannot afford it.
Can I put this to you? Can I just put this to you, Susan Hall? If you don't mind looking at the screen, there's a clip here from a senior Labour politician I'd like to play to you, if I may.
Frankly, it would be a global embarrassment for Britain if Susan Hall was elected as the Mayor of London. It would empower and embolden the anti-net zero, flat earth brigade across the world. And, you know, I do want to make clear today in my support for Sadiq that because the Tories have changed the system for electing the Mayor, you only get one vote, and a vote for anyone other than Sadiq risks letting Susan Hall in by the back door.
You're not calling Susan Hall a flat earther.
I am. I absolutely am.
Susan Hall, a response to that clip from the Evening Standard.
Well, the response to the clip from the Labour politician who is trying to advocate for Sadiq Khan, it's nonsense. The thing I say is that I approve of net zero, but not on the backs of those that cannot afford it. Sadiq Khan brought in the ULEZ expansion on the pretence it would clean up the air, and his own impact assessment said it would not.
You posted an article that said it was an absolute delusion that humans can control the climate with their CO2 emissions. Do you believe that?
No.
Why did you post it?
I don't know. I'd have to see what I actually posted. Sometimes
I think that's terrifying in the fact that we're in a climate emergency and you're trying to be
the poorest.
But it's not. And a lot of the things we do to address the climate crisis also address the cost of living crisis. If we insulate people's homes, we bring down people's bills, we bring down their emissions. And if we invest in a public transport system and get people out of their cars, we bring down emissions. That's climate leadership and taking the climate emergency seriously. We're seeing flooding.
Some nonsense in that clip, by the way, which is the idea of anyone really thinks Conservatives can win in London. And I'm not just saying this because I'm not a Conservative. I got this letter from the Conservative Party the other day admitting that they couldn't win in London, not even bold enough to say, please vote Conservative.
Well,
and I think that's like a sign that they've
well, that would be up to the voters, I think, Mr. Blackie.
On transport,
on transport.
The Mayor's cut bus routes by 22 million miles in London. He's cut tube maintenance, so tubes are breaking down. I think the essential thing we have to do first is get the money back into TfL to make sure it's stable so that people aren't stuck on a broken down central line tube on their way to work. And when we want to get a bus to work and we out of London, they can actually get that.
Sadiq Khan, what's Project Deloitte?
It's an issue that was raised by a Conservative in the Assembly about an old project that TfL will work on in relation to a number of issues to bring in-house some of the issues that Capita currently do in relation to the sea charge, the ULEZ, potential tolls for the Blackwall Tunnel and the Silvertown Tunnel. Because what TfL wants to do is to bring in-house some of the things currently outsourced.
Project Detroit is a more sophisticated new core technology programme for road user charging. Why is that programme in play if you're not going to do it?
It's not in play.
It's 21 million quid that's gone to it.
No,
so is it in play?
It's not in play. It's a policy carried over from Johnson's transport strategy in relation to paper mile, saying that Rishi Sunak supported when he was Chancellor. Absolutely.
Carried it on.
Rishi Sunak supported it as Chancellor 3 years ago. What's quite clear, and I want to make this, say this quite unequivocally on LBC, as I said many times over the last few years, as long as I'm Mayor, paper mile won't happen. London's going to be reassured, because I've written to the Commission to make it quite clear. It's in my manifesto. But on clean air, I'm not going to apologise at all for cleaning up the air in our city. None of us would allow our children or parents to drink dirty water. Why allow them to breathe dirty air?
Susan Hall.
Well, going back to paper mile, nobody believes you because you said you wouldn't bring in the ULEZ expansion. And you did, I'm told. It's still in the transport strategy. If you had no intention of bringing it in, it wouldn't still be in your transport strategy.
July 2021, you said there would be no plans to extend the ULEZ to outer London.
Well, let me be quite clear. The WHO changed their guidelines in relation to the toxicity of air, particular matter and nitrogen dioxide. Because we've now expanded the ULEZ to all of London, we now don't need to do things like
you did go back on that statement, didn't you? Well, so there will be people who think, well, he's gone back on that, he might go back on it. The homelessness has risen 71%, he's pledged to cut it by 2030, it's not happened. Whether it's the home building as well, you know, based on your record, really, can people trust you?
Well, let's deal with all three issues, if you give me the time. On house building, we're building more homes than any time since the 1970s, more completions than any time since the 1930s. In relation to rough sleeping, I'm really proud. 16,000 rough sleepers taken off the streets of London. More than 3/4 have stayed off. In relation to clean air, roadside emissions across London are down by 50%. 19 out of 20 cars seen driving in outer London are now compliant and benefiting from clean air.
That's great.
We should be really
what was
proud
promised
of that.
First off.
Well, no,
first off, you said you weren't going to do it, and then you did it.
No, my manifesto was quite clear in 2021. We're going to clean up the air in our city. What's quite clear also is there are still
no plans to extend the ULEZ to outer London.
That's not what my manifesto said. With
2021, you said that.
But let's be clear. The health of London is paramount. And so what we've done is improve the air in our city. But I'm quite clear, Paper mile is not happening.
I just want to be quite clear that I've listened to experts on paper mile and looked at the unfairness that is currently built into our charging models, the out-of-date congestion charge, and the unfairness within the charging of ULEZ. And I want to have a conversation with Londoners about a fairer system which would have road user charging on the table, because we need to look at how frequently people are driving, how heavy their cars are, the location. We need a much fairer charging system.
Susan Hall.
There is no way he won't bring in paper mile. He expected us to trust him on the expansion of the ULEZ, and that has brought so much hardship. It really has. People trusted him and he let them down. 60% of people in the consultation said, we don't want it. He ignored them. He put it in anyway. He will bring in paper mile. The evidence is there. If he really didn't want to, then they wouldn't have still had people working on it this year. £21 million of our money has gone into. Why is he spending £21 million of taxpayers' money, Londoners' money, if he's got no intention of bringing it in? He cannot be trusted, and we all know that. He goes back on what he promises.
What we now know on the ballot paper is the choice of cleaner versus polluted air. I'm quite clear in relation to being incredibly proud of policies to clean the air in London. Before my policies, there were thousands of children with stunted lungs forever, too many premature deaths in our city, too many adults with a whole host of health issues, from asthma to cancer, dementia to heart disease. You've got doctors, you've got GPs, you've got professionals in respiratory care.
Yeah,
you've got Great Ormond Street all supporting my policy. The only people against it is Susan Hall and the Tories.
The flat earthers?
Well, I think some of the things Susan Hall has done on social media, amplifying, promoting.
Can we go back
views
to
of
paper
climate
mile? Because
change,
I love the way you
deniers.
want the conversation moved. The fact is, you will bring in paper mile, or you would not have wasted, surely, £21 million of taxpayers' money. You will bring it in because that's what you have decided is a good idea. Just as you decided the ULEZ expansion is what you wanted to bring in, and that is nothing but a tax. And the worst part about that is about the tax. It's taxing people that simply cannot afford it. Nobody should bring in taxes that just affect those that have the least amount of money.
If I was fighting a campaign based on disinformation, misinformation and lies, I would say just because the Tory candidate supported the Garden Bridge, she wants to bring it back for £50 million more. I say things like, because the Tory candidate supported water cannons, she'd bring them back if she was elected mayor. I say things like, because the Tory candidate previously supported a Thames Estuary airport, she's going to bring them back if she becomes the mayor. I don't believe in those sort of tactics, though, Tom. I ain't going to do it.
Tom, he should be able to stand on his record and look at his record. It is absolutely abysmal.
On records,
in all areas.
You like to post calling Sadiq Khan a traitor rat. You made a baseless claim that he supported electoral fraud. You employed an Islamophobic trope about Londonistan. Is that the musings of a serious politician?
I have apologised for my social media a long time ago, and many times, and I have learnt from that. I rarely use.
What have you learnt?
I've learnt that you have to be very, very careful when you just flick on things without thinking twice about it. But I've apologised for that, and I've learnt.
They're not just hurty words.
And I've learnt from I have learnt from my mistakes.
Sadiq Khan.
Well, this is very serious because it affects me and my personal safety and my family's personal safety.
Would you feel safe in a London run by someone who tweeted and liked those things?
I'm very careful what I say now, and I've thought long and hard about this, Tom. I fought 3 council elections. I've fought 3 parliamentary elections. This is my 3rd mayoral election. The Tory candidate is the most dangerous candidate I fought against.
Well, I think that's an outrageous comment. And he would feel safer in a Susan Hall mayoralty, because I will do things for the police force that will make Londoners safer, much, much safer. Look at your record on safety in London. It's dreadful. This is the first time the Metropolitan Police has ever gone into special measures.
Going to come to that in just a moment.
Can I respond to your question?
Can I just make this point, though? Susan Hall, if you were to win in 8 days' time, and were Sadiq Khan to be in a position where he needed the security detail he's currently got, would you provide it? Would you pay for it?
It's not for the mayoralty, but absolutely, absolutely. And the one thing he has got to admit, I have never commented on his personal security, because if Sadiq needs personal security, then he should have it. Absolutely. And actually, that's for the police.
We've got to take responsibility as politicians of what we say, and our words can be incredibly damaging. And some of the stuff you've said has been really divisive and damaging. And I think just all of us as politicians need to take responsibility.
Which is why I've learnt by my mistakes that were done years ago.
I mean, look, Tom,
let's come to a question that touches on the police and on safety and on security. Cameron is in Hoxton. Hi, Cameron.
Hi.
Your question to the candidates, sir.
Last year, the Metropolitan Police released figures showing a huge increase in hate crime in London. Could the candidates please tell me what they plan to do to reassure those targeted and address this issue? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for the question. Let's speak to Rob Blackie first.
The Met is in a complete mess. That is why I'm standing for election. Trust in the Met is at record lows. Violent crime is up. I'm terrible to hear about hate crime. And I think most shockingly, after 8 years of Sadiq being in charge of the Met, they are catching rapists and sexual offenders at half the rate that they were in 2016. Half the rate. That's absolutely shocking, because 40% of those terrible crimes are committed by repeat offenders. So I have a question for Sadiq, which is, are you ashamed of that? Embarrassed?
Should I deal with the questioner first before I deal with the Lib Dem? I don't mind which order.
Let's go with Rob Blackie's question first, and then we'll come to the caller.
No, I'm incredibly proud of the work we've done, both tackling the tough causes of crime, but also being tough on crime as well. And this is why what Zoe was saying...
Knife crime is up 20% in a year.
What, so would you hate crime first or night? Well, I'm happy to do both.
Well, I think people's feelings of safety in London has deteriorated, certainly by the conversations we've been having on LBC about it.
So let's deal with violent crime before I deal with the questioner who rang in. So... 14 years ago when I was in Parliament, we made the point to the government that austerity was a choice and it had consequences. Cuts in police, cuts in youth services, cuts in public services, and serious youth violence began rising in 2013 across the country, and that included London. I became mayor in 2016, and this was an issue raised in 2016 during the hustings we had at LBC as well, because there'd been an increase in homicides, knife crime and burglary. Since 2016, despite government austerity carrying on, leading to thousands of officers being lost, 76 police stations closing down before I became mayor, police staff being lost, our population rising by 1 million, homicides are down, knife crime with injury is down, gun crime is down, and burglary is down, but it's too high. I as MP and as mayor, Tom, spent too much time in those 11 years as an MP and as a mayor speaking to victims of crime, bereaved families of crime, and the particular issue that worries me mostly in relation to this issue is violence against women and girls. There's an epidemic across the country. Every 3 days.
Can I just have a very quick show of hands on who has confidence in the current Met Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley? All 4 hands went up. You saw him yesterday, I think, Sadiq Khan. You have confidence in him, but the family of Stephen Lawrence do not have confidence in him.
Well, I spoke to Doreen yesterday, so let's not put words into Doreen's and the family's mouth. I spent an hour with Sir Mark yesterday. We had a frank, constructive and good conversation in relation to the concerns raised by Doreen, and I was really pleased that Sir Mark has confirmed he will ask a separate police force, who has the confidence of Doreen and the family, to look into the police assessment of fresh evidence. I agree with Doreen that the police service is still institutionally racist. I agree with Doreen the family's been let down over the last 31 years, and that's why I took on the previous commissioner. I was criticised by the Tories for doing so.
Hang on,
in relation to the structural and systemic issues that the Met Police Service have, which we've got to root out, make it anti-misogynistic, anti-homophobic and anti-racist.
So, Greens in City Hall have been some of the fiercest voices calling out the failings, and Londoners have experienced decades and decades of police failings, and it's absolutely essential that the Met Commissioner recognises those.
Are they still experiencing those failings?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's Sadiq Khan's responsibility, isn't it, as Police and Crime Commissioner?
Yes. I think there's a lot more that can be being done, as the Mayor of London, to hold the police to account. I think the police... So thinking about Cameron's question around hate crime, we need a police service that's held accountable locally. We need more structures locally where the police are held to account on local priorities, and that they're also accepting the fact that there's institutional racism, misogyny, homophobia and disableism, and making sure that all officers are culturally competent and respect London's diversity.
I'm going to come to Susan Hall in just a moment. I think, Zoe Garbett, you've suggested that you would like to see no murders in London in 10 years. That's fantasy land. That's not going to happen.
I think we have
to... It's terrible, but there's nowhere else in the world. We have to absolutely set what our ambitions are, and I think any higher than... No. Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to, because then all of our strategies and all of our policies aim towards that. I've worked in the NHS, and we have targets and policies working towards addressing mass inequalities. And I think if you don't set a bold target, you're not going to take the action to get there. Susan Hall.
Policing is so important, and it's all very well for Sadiq to say what might be right and what won't be. I've been talking to Londoners and listening to them, and people do not feel safe, which is why my main policies are around policing. I want to go back to borough-based policing, so there's proper accountability in every borough. I want 2 more bases in each borough, and they'll be in different places.
How much does that cost?
In different boroughs. Let me finish. So different bases, an extra 1,500 police on our streets. But if we have bases in different areas in the borough, in the actual boroughs, the police will be based where they're going out to work. At the moment, it is not working. I'll be putting £200 million extra into police.
Where's that
into
money come
the police.
From?
It's all written down, and it's all
you must
gone.
know.
Yeah, it's a whole list of different
Just
things.
give us a hint.
There's a whole list.
Is it in the manifesto?
I can get you copies of where
It's not in the
coming from.
manifesto.
Well, no, my pledges are in the manifesto.
So where's the
this.
costing?
The thing is this: you can listen to Sadiq, and as far as this is good, that's good. It's not good. 8 years, and look at the state. The policing needs massive attention, and I intend to put different policies into place that will change the way policing is done, because it's not working. We all know that, the way it is now. We need to see more police on the street. We all know that.
I don't think it's as simple as more police officers, though. We need to look at what they're doing as well and where they are. We hear from young Londoners that they don't want them in schools.
And we have 6,000 stuck in the back office in London right now. That's double the rate.
But it's more listening to Londoners about what they want to see prioritised.
Who could be solving crimes, who are being left in the back office.
Dame Louise Casey said in her report, where she described the Met as institutionally racist, that the Met can no longer presume that it has the permission of the people of London to police them. Sadiq Khan does it now, have that permission.
It's making progress, not quite there yet. So I was really, pleased that Dame Louise Casey agreed to do this report, which I called for.
That's an astonishing thing to say, though. The Met Police do not have the permission of Londoners to police them.
There's a reason why Louise said that. It's because we police by consent. And we know it's really important that people come forward when they've been a witness to crime, where they've been a victim to crime. And we know the tragedy of Sarah Everard, where a police officer abused his position using the warrant card to abduct, rape and murder her. I'm afraid there are systemic cultural issues across the country in all 43 police services. I think the Met Police Service is ahead of the other police services, and what Sir Mark has done is set out. Well, absolutely.
You've been in charge for 8 years, and you really think it's doing well.
Sir Mark is making remarkable progress.
Even though he doesn't have the consent of Londoners, you think?
Well, he's got a new Met plan for London, which is a journey to win back the trust and confidence of Londoners.
It's about people feeling safe and knowing that they can report a service that they know has got their back. And
what's really important is to understand there are complex causes of crime, without anybody excusing it. Deprivation, poverty, alienation, lack of opportunity, which is why we've been tough on the causes of crime. 500,000 young people can now go to a youth club and an after-school club. More than 130 were closed down over the last 14 years. 700 youth workers losing their jobs. We are being tough on crime, supporting the police, and tough on the complex causes of crime as well. And that's why homicides are down, gun crime is down, knife injury, those under 25 is down, and burglaries are down. More progress to be made.
Been killed since you've been mayor. Listening to you just now is the same story as we've been listening to for years. And yet what big differences are you putting in place? My policing plan will put differences in, which will put police officers back on the street. We don't feel safe. I'm a woman. Women do not feel safe. That needs to be addressed.
That's because the Met Police doesn't record if crime has been motivated or made worse by the hatred of women. So the Metropolitan Police, under me, would recognise misogyny as a hate crime, which means that it would be reported if hatred against women was part of the motivation for a crime, and then we could properly see the scale of the issue and then work to address it and show that we're taking it seriously.
We don't have enough officers to investigate those crimes right now.
Exactly.
It's more about what they're doing, not just the number of them.
So they're not doing a good job.
And we need more police on the streets, and they need to be where they are working in that community. And that's why bringing in the police hubs will actually put the police back to where they're going to be.
If people don't trust the police, just putting more police on the street is not going to solve the problem. We need to make sure that they're focused on what communities really want them to be focused on. So that's deprioritising, degrading, stop and search. It's making sure they're not over-policing our young people in our schools.
Stop and search has gone down over the period that knife violence has increased.
Communities actually are saying to me they want to see more police officers on the street to give them some sort of confidence. But confidence in police has gone down to 51% under Sadiq Khan. It's the worst it's ever been. The Metropolitan Police is under special measures for the first time ever.
I thought it was quite good it went into special measures because it recognised the failings and we're trying to improve
failings
it.
Under Sadiq
Do
Khan.
you believe, Susan Hall, that London is teetering on the brink of chaos, as a Conservative campaign video suggested?
I think London is in a very serious situation, and we've got to make sure that we recuperate the situation. We've got to make sure that we save it, because at the moment,
on the brink of chaos.
If you look in local communities, they are desperate. They cannot see their local police. They make reports if they're burgled and nothing happens.
London is under siege, you said. From whom?
I think that was
It's an article in the Daily Express. London is under siege?
Well, go out on the streets, and sometimes at night time, go out on the streets at night time and see about the gangs running around with machetes, because that's the stories I am hearing from the people that are running the night economy. That is not good.
Sadiq Khan.
I say in a respectful way, I think the Tory candidate should stop watching The Wire. We're not living in Baltimore, USA, in the noughties. I love this city. It could be better. We're trying really hard to make sure our city is fairer, greener and safer. Over the last 14 years, we've lost more than £1 billion from the government. Tell me, how many occasions did Susan Hall oppose those cuts to our police? How many occasions did she oppose cuts to youth services?
We can fix
How many
policing, but
occasions did she cut?
The Office for National Statistics says you're less likely to be a victim of crime in London than the rest of the country, Susan Hall.
Well, you talk to Londoners. Londoners do not feel safe. Londoners constantly tell me they're not feeling safe.
There's a difference between the feeling and the reality. And the Statistics Authority says you're actually less likely to be a victim of crime in London than the rest of the country.
Well,
and less likely to be injured as well.
You tell that to people that have lost... There's a phone stolen every 6 minutes in London. You tell that to people that can't wear their watches because they're frightened of going out on the streets. You tell that to people that roam around the streets at night time with machetes. So I'm told by people from the nighttime economies. I was told by people... I'm not allowed to in the morning, but I was told by people running the nighttime economy that they are concerned because these gangs that run through the streets... I spoke to the Westminster MP about it, Nikki Aitken.
Conservative MP.
And she went out... Yes, it's evidence, though. She's went out with the police at night time, and she said there were gangs marauding around the streets.
One of the things that has made an enormous difference in saving particularly young people who have been stabbed, is London's Air Ambulance. It's a charity, needs 15 million quid to cover its costs. Would any of you like to say now that you would fund the London Air Ambulance?
I've supported in the past to fundraise. We can't from City Hall fund the ambulance. I've seen the great job they've done both at the Trauma Centre and at the... 15 million
quid, it's a drop in the ocean of a 21 billion budget. Because it saves so many lives.
The way the ambulance service has operated in the past is getting additional money through sponsorship, and I've been supporting them to try and get additional money through sponsorship. I'm positive we can raise that money.
What we need is a police force that works so well we don't.
But none of you will commit to funding.
We know we need to stop the stabbings in the first place, and that needs a police service.
I've been out on the London Air Ambulance reporting on it. They do amazing work. Oh. None of you will say that you would support.
I would happily support them and speak with them and look into how we can get them funded. I'd look into how I could fund that from my priorities.
Well,
if this is something,
to be fair, I suspect we all would, but you're asking us to make a funding pledge here and now.
What's the argument against it, Sadiq Khan?
Well, in the past, I've supported them raise money from private sponsorship and from members of the public. I'm going to carry on doing that.
I'll tell you why.
But we also need to be prioritising, addressing and keeping young people safe. I think it's really tragic. You know, young people need to see a future in our city. We need to give young people hope, and we need to create and support youth services, youth workers, and just make sure that young people are really thriving in our city. I wanted to present a much more positive view of how I see London.
Of thriving, let me read this from Adrian Walthamstow. It's basically impossible to go for a drink or get something to eat in central London after 10 p.m. Yet we have a nighttime czar and 120 grand a year claiming London is a 24-hour city. It is nonsense. What will the candidates do differently to make 24-hour London a reality? It's a terrible record for your nighttime czar, isn't it? You can't get a meal after you've seen a show.
Well, look, I mean, the nighttime economy goes from 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. And one of the reasons why...
People work in that time, but you can't go out.
Well, one of the reasons why businesses have struggled is a combination of the pandemic, a combination of business rates going through the roof, being hiked up, rents hiking up, but also they can't get skills or labour for the staff that they need. The good news is we've got the night shift getting people to the centre. We've got the night overground working as well. One of the things that I want to make sure happens
is it's working well.
One of the things we've got to do is make sure we get more people back into the centre, but also they've got the staff and the support they need.
The night time, the pubs are closing at an alarming rate in London.
Because
the restaurants haven't got anyone in. They can't
pay
get
the
staff.
business rates. They can't pay the rent. The cost of doing business has gone through the.
So what's the point of having a nighttime sale? They can't do anything about it. 120 grand.
Because what's happened is rather than businesses closing down at record numbers, there's a plateau, and now we've got some businesses going up. What we need is to get people back in the centre of our city, but also we need a government on the side of small businesses.
I think we could start with a night czar who actually isn't just a Labour supporter and is somebody who can actually do the job properly, supporting those businesses. I was out with nighttime businesses on Thursday of last week, seeing what we could do with them. There's a lot we can do, but it requires somebody who takes it seriously as a full-time job.
We're hurtling towards a conclusion here. It's gone very, very quickly, for me at least. I don't know about you. Let me ask you all whether you would all commit to serving a full term as mayor if elected. Rob?
Absolutely.
Susan?
Absolutely.
Zoe?
Yes.
Sadiq?
Yes, so it's been the privilege of a lifetime to have the opportunity to give back to this
dash for
city.
Westminster seat?
No, listen, the London Promise has given the helping hand to those who work hard. As long as I'm mayor, London will have the helping hand.
Labour and the Tories rejected an EU-proposed youth mobility scheme for UK citizens aged between 18 to 30 to allow them to hop back across into Europe to work, to go and study, whatever. Do you think the Conservatives were wrong to choose to go against that scheme?
I certainly think it's something that we could look into.
Sir Keir Starmer's closed it down.
I think we should look into this as well.
You disagree with him?
Yeah, I do.
And we are agreeing on something, Sadiq. That must be a record.
Brexit has been a disaster for London. Of course we should be doing it. We need to try and reverse Brexit. In the short term, that's not going to happen. We can at least make things less bad.
Yeah, young people have had their futures taken away with Brexit, and I think anything that we can do to support them to be able to get the opportunities across our great continent is really important.
I'm going to fire some quick questions at you in the final 2 minutes, if I may. So short answers appreciated. On the young person point, graduates now have to pay £50,000 or earn £50,000 before they pay down the capital of their student loan. Rob, is university still worth it?
Yes, it is.
Susan Hall?
Yes.
Sadiq?
Yes, it is.
We need free education.
OK. Susan Hall, is Gaza occupied by Israel?
I believe in a two-state solution.
UK law says it is. Do you agree?
It should be a two-state solution.
Rob?
Yeah.
It is. I've answered your question. It's a shame the Tory doesn't.
Zoe?
Yes.
Should HS2 start at Euston?
Yes.
I think, there's been failings around the development of HS2, and what we've got now is horrific.
Susan Hall?
I would like to see that, yes.
Obviously, people come to London, not Old Oak Common.
Sadiq Khan, is there a question you would like to ask Susan Hall?
I think this is the greatest city in the world. The diversity is one of the reasons why it's great. Do you regret supporting Donald Trump, who's a racist, sexist and homophobe? Do you regret liking Enoch Powell? Do you regret liking Lee Anderson, the Islamophobe? Will you apologise unequivocally for having those sorts of views and promise to be a mayor if you win that unites communities rather than your record of dividing them?
I do not divide communities. I support all communities. I come from Harrow, where it's the most diverse borough in London, I'd say. It's incredible. And actually, if you look at all communities...
Are you going to apologise or not?
No, if you look at all communities, we've all got the same values. We all believe in hard work. We all believe in family, and we all believe in fairness. And we should all look at people in that way. We've all got the same values.
No apology for Trump, for Enoch Powell or Lee Anderson.
Susan,
you're unfit to be the mayor.
We will give you the last word. Thank you all very much indeed. Rob Blackie, the Lib Dem candidate, Susan Hall from the Conservatives, Sadiq Khan of Labour, and to Zoe Garbett, the Green Party candidate as well. The votes are on the 8th of May. Do make sure you bring... Second of May. 8 days. 8 days, 2nd of May. God, that's a blind...
People already voting.
Do make sure that you bring ID with you to vote. Thank you very much indeed for your time. We are back tomorrow at 4. At 7, it's Ian Dale. Next, Tonight, with Andrew Marr.
Thanks, Tom.